So today we're going to do a review of some of the questions on the GED test concerning the math reasoning. Just some things to pick up on. The GED math is one of the hardest sections for people to pass. But keep in mind, a lot of that's just due to anxiety over math. If you can just kind of keep your composure and use your test-taking skills, a lot of times you can do just fine and get your passing score. Basically, I think there's around 42 questions on the GED test itself. So you need to get around 30 of those questions correct. So you don't have to be perfect. You just got to know which questions to really focus on and which questions to let go. So saying that, as we move through these as part of the GED test, notice that again, just some pointers to the test. Let's see here. Again, you should try not to spend too much time on any part of the test. So on questions, if you're unsure what the answer is, just go ahead and make your best guess and just move on to the next question. Something else you can do is you're allowed to what they call flag for review. So if you're unsure of what an answer is, you can always flag it. And when you get back to the very end of the test, there's a way to review questions that what questions you actually want to go back and look over. So you can take advantage of that on the very end of the test is review questions that you just want to have a second look at. Some questions, there's going to be a split screen. So those are the ones you just got to really try to pay attention to what the question's all about. So without any further ado, let's go ahead and move into the test itself. So some things to bring out on some practice questions is you will have access to the GED Formula Sheet. There will be some little icons on the computer where you can actually see it on the computer. If you click it on the computer, you can move it around if you want. You can also make it bigger or smaller. There's a scroll bar. You can kind of look at it that way. There's also a calculator reference sheet as well. So the calculator that's being used is the TI-30XS Multiview. So if you're not sure about it, again, you can move this around a little bit if you need to. You can scroll it around. You can make it bigger and smaller and close back out. On the GED, they should also be giving you hard copies of those. There also is an online calculator, but on the practice test, the calculator doesn't actually work. On GED test, you can use the online, but again, you also will be handed a calculator if you want to actually hold the calculator in your hand. So what I'm going to do is just try to talk about some strategies of how to attack some of the questions on the GED test. So let me see here. Let me close that back out. Open it back up. So again, you can just Google this practice test just like I did. It's not too hard to find. Just type in GED math practice test and you can find it on the internet. So when we work in math, a lot of things we want to focus on is, the unknown. Let's see here. Found my mouse. So what we look for sometimes is what's called the unknown. What are we looking for? That's usually the last part of the question. The known, that's usually some information given in the problem itself. And then also we want to identify what's referred to as the relationship. So if I can identify the relationship, And the relationship is a lot of times can be some type of formula that you can get off the GED Formula Sheet, or just some of your own intuition. And then by using that relationship, you should be able to come up with a strategy to solve the problem. So that becomes the next part, is then try to solve. And does the answer make any sense? That would be like your last thing. Does your answer make sense? So let's look at this question here and see if we can make sense of this question. A painter rented a wallpaper steamer at 9 a.m. and returned it at 4 p.m. Her total pay was $28.84. What was the rental cost per hour? So what we pick up on is the unknown is going to be the cost per hour. So what do we not know is the cost per hour. Some of the known facts is the total cost is the $28.84. So we can kind of pick up on that. That's kind of known to us. So the total is $28.84. Another thing that gave me is this some time. The painter rented a wallpaper steamer from 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. So that information gives us how long they actually rented it for. So if it went from 9 a.m. to 4 p.m., that would be like 10, 11, 12, 1, 2, 3, 4. So another thing we know is it's rented for 7 hours. So another thing we can identify is rented for 7 hours. So one thing we can pick up on is on the formula sheet, if you don't identify this, is down at the bottom, notice the total cost is on the formula sheet. Total cost is going to be the number of units times the price per unit. So on our practice tests, talks about that total cost is $20.84. So we know that that formula actually comes into play here. So this relationship we pick up on is, let's see if I can get my marker to work here. So we pick up on it is this total cost of this $28.84. It's going to be determined by, you rent it for $7 and rent it for 7 hours, but we don't know the cost per hour. So if I multiply 7 times the cost per hour, that's going to give me the $28.84. From here, since it's multiple choice, you could be putting these answers in, and whichever one solves the problem is going to be your answer. What you can also do is, since these are related multiplication, we also know that if I just work backwards, the $28.84, if I divide that by the 7, that's going to also give me the cost per hour. So using my calculator, if I can find my calculator, let's see here. Don't really have a handy dandy calculator here, so we'll just have to use what's on the computer. So this $28.84 is just being divided by the 7. That's going to give me then this $4.12. So we pick up on that $4.12 as our answer. So the unknown, that's going to come from the last part. The known is going to be information given in the problem. The relationship that has to kind of come from us a little bit. That's where the math reasoning comes into play. And let's see where this takes us. Let's see here. So if we check our answer, we see that the answer is C, which is what we have, the $4.12. Let's look at the next question here. What is the value of 36x minus 8y squared when x equals 3 and y equals -6. So this is a evaluated algebraic expression. This is what we refer to as the order of operations. So in the order of operations, if you recall, we have what we refer to as please excuse my dear Aunt Sally, where P stands for parentheses, E is exponents. You then have to multiply and divide, and then lastly you add and subtract. So in this problem here, we have this expression which we have to substitute these values in for x and y, and then we have to follow the order of operations on it. So this is going to be then 36 times 3 minus then 8 times -6 being squared. So in this problem, the first thing I really pick up on is there are parentheses, but there's nothing to do inside the parentheses. It's already simplified. So these parentheses really just serve as multiplication. The exponent, that's that real raised power of them too. So that -6 squared means -6 times -6. That's going to be a 36. And again, you can type that into a calculator if you need to. So 36 times 3 minus then, and then -6 times -6 was 36. So there we then can use our calculator to maybe finish out some of this math here if we want. So looks like I got to multiply next. So let's see if I can get my mouse stick to show up for me. So I have this 36 times 3, which is going to be this 108. Minus then 8 times 36. So 8 times 36 is going to give me this 288. And then we have to subtract those two values. So 108 minus 288. That's going to be -180. And if you have good calculator skills, you can put this problem into the calculator as is. And you would not necessarily use the order of operations because the calculator would do that for you. So that's where that nice GED calculator comes in handy. I just don't happen to have that handy here. And neither do you probably at home. So let's see if we can clear this off. Let's see, I think we said B is the answer. So if we check that. So B would be our answer using what they can refer to as the order of operations. Let's see what the next question brings us. So Annie is planning a business meeting for her company. She has a budget of $1,325 for renting a meeting room at a local hotel and providing lunch. She expects 26 people to attend the meeting. The cost of renting the meeting room is $270. Which inequality shows how to find the amount X Annie can spend on lunch for each person? So one thing we pick up on again is that last part of it is the which inequality. So inequalities are these symbols here, these greater than or equal to, less than or equal to, greater than or equal to, or less than or equal to symbols. So we have that going on. So and also they say X is going to be how much is spent on lunch for each person. So the unknown, which in this case is the X, is going to be how much is spent on each person for lunch. So the known facts in this problem is she has a budget of $1,325. Well, remember budgets, that's all you're allowed to spend. So one of the things we pick up on is, as far as inequalities go, we cannot go over the 1,325. Right there. So that's the relationship we have between those two things. The other thing we pick up on is there's 26 people. What I have to do, though, is each person is going to have to be charged for lunch. That's going to be 26 times X, because each person is going to eat lunch and it's going to cost us so many dollars, which they didn't tell us. They said X is going to be that. That's that total costing again. So the total cost for feeding those people is going to be that. But we also have another piece of information, and that's the costs that are in the room is the 270. And that's a one-time payment. So if I rent the room for 270, that kind of helps us solve the problem if I can put that all together. So what I pick up on, though, is the less equal to symbol part. If you notice, if I can just identify that, that's just B and D. So process elimination comes into play. And if we pick up on that, well, that 26X is going to represent the cost for feeding the people, and then adding to that is the 270, which is going to be the fixed cost of the renting of the room. That's going to kind of put this all together for us. So therefore, this takes us down to D, or B would end up being our answer there. So if we check that, let's see here. Oops. Before I check that, hold on here. I want to check answer explanation. And B is the correct answer for the answer explanation. So this next question we see is Dominique earns $285 per week plus 8% commission rate on all of the sales. If Dominique sells $4,213 worth of merchandise in 1 week, how much is his total earnings for the week going to be? So again, the unknown is going to be his total earnings. That's going to be the unknown. So the known facts are he earns $285 a week. We see that here. He earns $285 per week. Now, this 8% commission rate is where it gets to be interesting. Now, percents, basically, what we pick up on is the part can be determined by multiplying the base amount times the percent. So that's the relationship we have between percent math. So the part would actually be the commission. We don't know the actual commission, but we do know that he's going to make a commission off of the base amount, which is his $4,013. And I'm going to multiply it by this 8% or 0.08, because you have to change percents to decimals most of the time. Because again, 8% really means 8 cents per dollar. That's his rate as a decimal. So he's going to multiply the 4,213 times this 0.08, because he's not going to get the full 4,213. He's only going to get a part of it. So that's the math that we have to do, is that. So the relationship is pick up on percents, and one of the formulas for percents is the part can be determined by multiplying the base amount times the percent amount. That's not on the formula sheet either, so that would be something that we'd have to come up with. So using our calculator, we pick up on then this 4,213 must be multiplied to this 0.08. So it's going to be a commission of $337.84. Let's see if I can get that to come up here again. So $337.04. So pick up on though his total earnings is going to be the 285 and the 337.04. So I still have to put those together. So using my calculator, we pick up on then that the 285 has to be added to the 337.04. So 622.04 ends up being my total earnings in this problem. So answer ends up being then D would be our answer for that. Let's see here. So if we check our answer, we do see that D would be the correct answer. So we do need to know something about percent math there. That's not on the formula sheet. So that'd be something that you may want to review a little bit more of as well. So the next thing we have in is that split screen stuff that they were talking about. Again, I'm just going to focus on the question side. So the scientist plots the data for a tree number 2 on a coordinate grid. She begins by plotting data for year 3 and year 11. So I'm seeing tree 2, year 3, year 11. What are the locations of the 2 points on the coordinate grid? So I need to locate 2 points. So what we did is I said, click on the grid to plot the points. So if I can do that, so what we see is diameter of tree 2, yep, tree 2, years on the x-axis, there's our little x, so years is on the x, and the y is on our vertical axis, the diameter. So that 3 was that first one, that 312 was the first one we want to plot. So 312 would be about there. If I hit that again, notice that it should remove it. So 312, and then this, I think it's 13, no, it was 11. 11 was this 14.4. So 11 and this 14.4. So if I do that, that plots those 2 points. So if I check the answer on that one, you can kind of see that there's that 312 and then there's that 11, 14.4. That would be the 2 points that we'll be graphing there. Let's see what our next question is. Let's see. Let's see if we can get this scratch paper off there. So again, the scientist wants to create an equation that models her data for each tree so that she can predict the diameter for the future. Complete their linear equation that fits the data for tree 1, where x is the year and y is the trunk diameter in inches. Click on the variables and the numbers you want to select and drag them into the boxes. So in looking at this, one of the things we pick up on is this word linear equations. That's something that's on the formula sheet. So if we take note of that, the GED formula sheet, we see down here equation of a line or linear equation. They have this y equals mx plus b. So notice that this x is part of this right-hand side here. The y was already laid down The x looks like that would be the next thing we need to identify is that. So what I can do is drag in this x up here. See if I can get that thing to drag. Not working for me. Maybe this mouse work there. Okay. So just trying to use these tools is a little tricky. So if I go back to the formula sheet, the thing in front of the x is what's referred to as the m. The m is referred to, above it is, notice that there's an m equation. To find m, it's the slope of the line. So y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. So it's nowhere, it's the change in the y's over the change in x's, it's that ratio. So how do we figure that out? If I look at the graphic over here, again, we're talking about tree 1. And we see that there's a bunch of data here. All I need is 2 pieces of information. So this would be a solution, and this would be a solution. That would be like those 2 points, like from the previous question. So now remember how here is your x's and your diameters are your y's. So the formula says you need to subtract the y's. So if I go 19.2 minus 18.6, that'll be a start. So 19.2 minus 18.6. That's going to give us then this 0.6. And then you subtract your x's, so 3 minus 1 would be 2. So I got to divide that by then a 2. That's going to be this 0.3. So when I do the math, what I pick up on is the 19.2 minus the 18.6 is going to give me this 0.6. And then this 3 minus 1 is going to give me this 2. And when I do that math, that gives me then this 0.3. So what goes in front of the x is going to be this 0.3. So we drag that there. Now, each time you fill in a box correctly, you're earning points. So if you still don't know what goes here, you can make an educated guess at it. But this value that goes here is what's called the y-intercept, or when x is 0. So when x is 0, we want to figure out what that value is. Notice that when x is 1, 18.6. So no, it can't be that one, because that's when x is 1. So it's either going to be this 18.3 or this 18.0 probably. Now to figure out what it is, what I can do is define what this value is. I have values for x and y. I got a bunch of them. I'm just going to use the first one. So remember, the 1 is a value for x as long as I use 18.6 for the value for y. So in this equation, I have got to find my little mouse here. So I have this 18.6 goes in for y. The 0.3 goes in for m. The 1 goes in for x, but we don't know that last thing. Because remember, we had this equation, y equals mx plus b. That's our little relationship. So when I do my math, 18.6 is just going to be 18.6 still. 0.3 times 1, well, that's just 0.3, because when you multiply by 1, nothing changes. So what can you add to 0.3 that gives you this 18.6? Again, I can use subtraction, or I can just recognize that, well, 18.3 plus 0.3 would be 18.6. So therefore, what we pick up on then is 18.3 would be the missing piece. And that would be our linear equation for that one. So if we check our answer, we see that y equals 0.3x plus 18.3. So remember, if you can get the x, get the slope, those aren't as hard to do because they're part of the formula sheet, but finding that 18.3 was a little bit more challenging to solve the problem. So this third question stays on the same graphic, but let's see where they take us this time. Because it looks like giving us a little bit different information still. So year 13, the scientists put tree wrap around tree 1. So I got to remember, we're now talking about tree 1. We're over here. And we're talking about year 13. So what the scientists will want to do is put tree wrap around tree 1. So it looks like they're using this picture here. The tree wrap is just the little wrapping that they're doing around the tree. So it kind of looks like a cylinder since it's going around a tree. This is going to protect it from the winter snow. The height of the tree wrap is 45 inches. The price of the wrap is measured by the square foot. So that's cueing me in that this is an area problem. To the nearest square foot, how many square feet of wrap do we need? So our question is how many square feet do we need? That's the unknown. Some things that are known is year 13, we have this diameter of 22.2 inches. That's something that's known. Something else that's known is through the picture, we see that this is a cylinder. And we also have this height that's in inches as well. Well, first thing I pick up on is this has got to be in feet. So these units have to be converted over into feet. Since there's 12 inches in a foot, we can divide 45 by 12 to get how many feet are there. So 45 divided by 12 is going to give me then 3.75 feet. So this is going to be 3.75 since we need it to be in feet. This 22.2 inches is a diameter, but it's got to be in feet. So I have to divide that by 12 as well. So the 22.2 has to be divided by 12. That's going to give me 1.83 feet. So notice we had to round that a little bit. So we end up with this is now going to be like this 1.83 feet. Now, what I pick up now is we have some information, but notice that we're talking about a cylinder. And we're talking about area of a cylinder. So this is surface area. So using our formula sheet, we pick up on that for the cylinder. We have surface area as SA, so it's going to be 2 pi RH times this 2 pi R squared. Notice that there's actually 3 surfaces on a cylinder. There's a top and a bottom, and then there's the wall itself, the wrapping. So pi r squared is actually the formula for the area of a circle. 2 pi r squared means top and bottom circles of a cylinder. So we don't need that part of the formula. We just need to know the 2 pi RH. So that's going to be the formula we're end up using here. And notice that they say pi is 3.14. So if we use this formula, we got to be using 3.14 for pi. So when I'm doing this problem over here, I have to pick up on that the formula we're going to be using is going to be 2 times 3.14 times the radius times the height. So we end up with this 2.2 times 3.14 times the radius. Well, notice that what they gave us over here was the diameter. The radius is actually half of the diameter, so I still got to do some more math. I got to change that 1.83 to a radius. To do that, all I got to do is divide it by 2. So the 1.83 has to be divided by 2. That's going to give me this 0.916 or about 0.92. So notice that I'm rounding here, so we're not going to get a perfect answer. So when I do the math, I actually have to use a 0.92 for the radius. So we have to pick up on there's a 0.92 there for the radius. And the height was not the 45 inches, but the 3.75 feet since we need everything in square feet. So if I can piece that all together, we have the 2 times the 3.14 times the 0.92 times then the 3.75, and that ends up being 21.66. So it looks like that's close to this 22 square feet. So looks like A would be our answer to that one. So notice that is a lengthy problem, and that may be one I would flag and come back to because there's a lot to sort through on that problem. So, you may want to make your best guess on that one, but that would be the strategy that I'd have to come up with, is all that information to sort through. So now we have a graphic, got our title, and got our legends here, axis, not our legends, but our labels for our axes. So the graph shows the level of ibuprofen, Y units in a patient's bloodstream, X hours after the ibuprofen was taken. So this is about ibuprofen in patient's bloodstream. Notice that the X-axis is the hours. So get my little pen working again. So this is in hours here, and then this is the ibuprofen level. So it looks like 0 hours, there's no ibuprofen in your system. But then as you go along here, it kind of peaks out. So it looks like not quite an hour, it's into your system fully. And then you start to see it start to leave your system. And then it kind of, about 8 hours out, it's not very effective anymore. That's why you kind of hear, taking it every so often to keep it in your bloodstream. So let's see what this question wants us to do. The level of ibuprofen in the patient's bloodstream increased. So that's a key word for us, increased. From, what do we got here? Hours to hours. So notice how we're using hours. So they're talking about the x-axis. So notice that it looks like increasing is in this area right here. So it looks like 0 is the beginning point of the increase, and it increases all the way up to about here where the units is 6. So, but notice that we're talking about hours though, not units. So I have to really be paying attention to the x-axis. So notice that it's actually not quite 1. It's close to 1, but it's not quite 1. So it looks like we're talking about a fraction, probably that 2/3. 2/3 of an hour is when it's maximum performance. You should be feeling it. And then after that, it starts to decrease from there. So from 0 to 2/3 hours is where it increases. So watch out, because that 6 kind of will bait you there a little bit. But that's not the hours, that's the units. I have to be focusing on the numbers along the x-axis, the horizontal axis. So we check that, and we'll see that A, drop item down to 1 was 0, and drop down item 2 was the 2/3. So that does check out. So our next question is, looks like geometry, by just seeing the picture. The office used paper drinking cups in the shape of a cone with the dimensions given. So this distance across here would be considered a diameter. This is going to be at the height of the cone, the 4 inches. To the nearest cubic inch, what is the volume of each drinking cup? So again, the unknown is going to be volume. So what is the volume? So we'll pick up on if we go to our formula sheet, and we do have a cone. So we see cone, SA stands for surface area, V stands for volume, so it's going to be this 1/3 pi r squared h is going to be our formula. So we'll have to transfer that over. So volume is going to equal 1/3 times pi, which was that 3.14, times the r squared times the h. Looks like we don't have to change these units. We can stick with the 2 3/4 and the 4 inches. But notice that the 2 3/4 is a crazy looking fraction, but I can actually just say that's 2.75. But remember, that's a diameter. The formula needs a radius, so I still got to divide that by 2. So 2.75 still has to be divided by 2 to get a radius. So notice how they keep making us do some little discrete measurements. So the 2.75 has to be divided by 2. That's going to give me this 1.375. So to do this problem, we can't be using the 2.75. We got to be using the 1.325. Or is that 375? I can't really remember now. Got to go back over and look. 1.375. So when I do this math here, I got to do this 1/3. 1/3 basically just means to divide by 3. So I'm just going to go 3.14 times 1.375 times 1.375 times the height, which will be 4. And then I'm just going to divide that all by 3, since I don't have that fancy calculator. So see if that will help us determine the volume for this thing. So if I clear that off, I have 3.14 times 1.375 times 1.375 times 4. Get that answer and then divide that by 3. That's going to be then about 8. So 7.9 looks like it stays there. So B would be our answer to that one. So if we look at our answer explanation, we see the answer is B. They like fractions, but you can also change things to decimals. So keep in mind there's different ways to do that. They actually changed everything into fraction form. So looking at this question, there are S steps from the pedestal of the head of the Statue of Liberty. The number of steps in the Washington Monument is 26, less than 6 times the number of steps in the Statue of Liberty. Which expression represents the number of steps in the Washington Monument in terms of S? So again, the unknown is which expression. So in this problem, when it says which expression, that leaves out A and D because A and D are inequalities. They should have said which inequalities. So that kind of hints out that A and D are out of the problem, but just because it said which expression. Okay, so that helps us out just by recognizing what an expression is. It didn't say inequality. So which expression represents the number of steps in the Washington Monument in terms of S? So remember, S is the number of steps from the pedestal of the head of the, let's see what it says there. So S is up here. It's the steps from the pedestal to the head of the Statue of Liberty. So if I was walking up to the Statue of Liberty, they didn't tell us how many steps that is, but they gave me a relationship that said the number of steps in the Washington Monument is 26 less than 6 times the number of steps in the Statue of Liberty. So 6 times means we're multiplying 6 times the number of steps. So, but notice that we don't know what that is. That's going to be that S. So it's going to be 6s, because times means multiply. 27 less means you're going to lose 27 from there. So I'm going to subtract 27 from that. So 27 less than 6 times means I'm going to subtract 27 from that. So it looks like our answer is going to end up being C in that problem. So if we check our answer there. So you can kind of see our answer is C. So let's see if we can clear this off here. Go to the next question. Well, that concludes going over the GED test. So again, some of the strategies you just got to pick up on is the unknown. What are you looking for? That's that last sentence in the question. What's given in the problem? And then you're trying to figure out what is that relationship in the problem? What is that relationship? So if you can find that relationship on the GED formula sheet, take advantage of that. Then if you can't really see a relationship, don't forget that you can just use your best guess in doing the problems. So hopefully that will be helpful in your finishing touches for studying for your GED math tests.